Good afternoon and evening, everyone. St. Markins, friends of the cathedral. My name is Paul Lebens-Englund. I'm fortunate to serve as the seventh dean here at St. Mark's Episcopal Cathedral in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I am here this afternoon with a friend and a colleague and a champion of great things, Rachel Babbitt, who we're going to get to know a little bit in this session. And so I hope that you'll settle in for a few minutes just to listen in and learn a little bit about Rachel and Rachel's work and the hopes for Rachel's connection here at the cathedral this fall. So welcome, Rachel. Good to have you here in the space.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here. It's just exciting.
Yeah, well, it means a lot. Folks don't know that you've been traveling and you carved out, this was a priority to make this happen today so that we can get the word out this weekend. So thank you for your generosity of time and of spirit. And we'll just wade into this and give folks a little taste for who you are. So tell us just a bit about yourself. What should we know about you?
Yes. So as you said, my name is Rachel Babbitt. I've actually been a member of St. Mark's since 2001. And I just actually, the trip that I got back to most recently this weekend was with the individual who invited me to come to St. Mark's, Michael Lawyer, longtime friend. We grew up in the same Episcopal church together as children. And he was a young adult. St. Mark's had a large young adult program. And that's how I got invited in 2001. We went for coffee and he was like, well, what are you doing? And I fell in love. I fell in love with the space. I fell in love with the people. I fell in love with the mission work that is in the DNA and the blood, the care and the compassion that people have. I'm a lifelong Episcopalian, lifelong Minnesotan, and so to find a home that really fit all that has been really great. And I've worn a lot of hats as a member. I was on council. I've been a lay youth minister, and in the last, I would say, 10 years, just someone hanging in the pews, getting fed, and that's been a really, really great space to be in for a period of time.
Fantastic. Yeah. So yeah, council service and live to tell the tale. So if anyone out there is paying attention to that, not only effective in leadership, but sustainable in leadership. And so in 2001, Michael invited you to the cathedral.
Yes.
I just am curious about, can you just share just a little nugget about what you were doing at that point in time and why you even said yes to showing up to a young adult thing? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah, so I was just finishing my undergraduate degree. I have a social work degree from the College of St. Catherine, or University of St. Kate's now. And I had been real focused, when you're in college, you're doing internships, you're doing all of that. And this was pre-Facebooks, so this is, I ran into somebody's mom who's like, oh, you need to connect with so-and-so. And so Michael and I connected, and he was working for Episcopal Community Services at that time and very connected to the diocese. And a whole bunch of our friends who were from all over the state were now in Minneapolis. And so he was bringing me back into the kind of Episcopal fold. I'd done camps as a kid. I'd done retreats, very engaged, loved that community, but like so often, moved away from it when I was in college. And he invited me, and I was in that space of like, oh yeah, I loved that community. I'd be happy to come in. And I remember pretty vividly the first experience. I'd been to the cathedral, as a kid, but then to be, this 21, 22, 23-year-old to come in and be like, this could be my church. You start to view it in a different way. It's not this big space that's so, I was always there for high church events, confirmations and other things. And you're like, oh, okay, this is cool. Look at these people, they're really approachable. They're not stuffy, which as a kid, you're looking in. And to start that journey and then have people who preached really well, who then start to take your faith and bring it up a level. it was just enriching. And that's why I stayed. I stayed because I made other friends, not just the ones I grew up with, but now lifelong friends that are family. Yeah.
Yeah, and something you said really strikes me as so true, and in fact was true for me when I first came here, because the interview process didn't include me having any time on the Cathedral campus. And so even I, as a person who grew up kind of, outstate in Eastern Washington, like I was in the diaspora compared to where the Cathedral was. So going to the Cathedral was always like, oh man, it's a little intimidating. I was pretty clear it wasn't my space. And it always took relationships, like people I knew and trusted from different contexts who said, no. Yeah, it's in this kind of space, but it's people. Like the Cathedral is people. And it sounds like that's kind of what got you through the threshold, right? Personal invitation. Yeah.
I went to St. Matthew's Episcopal Church, small church in St. Paul. There was 5 of us in the youth group of our age group, and many times we met in what was an old robing closet as our youth group room. Yeah. I mean, like it's not the St. Matt's you see today, which they've added space and done stuff. It was tiny, and it was. I knew everybody at the church. Like they were all safe adults. They were all good. So then you come into this space, and it's also overstimulating, because you're like, I'm trying to put this all into place. But it's the people. It's and then I got invited to serve for Monday night supper, and then I got invited to, well, hey Rachel, you love youth. Would you ever consider doing, youth group on Wednesday nights? And, it's those little invitations that then I got to know the people that did Monday night supper. Then I got to know the people who did youth group and the families that had kids of that age. And literally those are the people that have become my family. I'm granted, all those kids are now in their late 20s and early 30s, but it's great.
Yeah. So and you said some things in there of sort of you I've always known you as someone who really wears your servant's heart on your sleeve, right? Servant forward, and that there's something that happens that's transformative in the midst of tending to the cares and concerns of the world around us. You mentioned that not only that's where you were building relationships, but that's also an easy sort of gateway to invite people into deeper relationships, is to do a thing together. And granted, the church's typical thing that we do together is come and do the worship with us together on a Sunday. But so many people have a different disposition where they're like, well, that might show up kind of step 2 or 3, but like I'm out in the streets, like I'm a wear my servant's heart on my sleeve kind of thing. And you have always been a person I've known in the work that you do that's about creating those spaces where sort of church meets world, and people meet each other in the midst of the service work that they care about, right? That's the first gospel touch is work that we care about. And so you had done a bunch of that work working for the diocese. And as I understand, part of your discernment around when you were ready to kind of move and do your new thing and create the business that you've created, is a desire, I think, maybe to help multiple organizations figure out how to be doing that. And so I'd be curious are you willing to tell us a little bit about the business and how it's going? And I know it's a new venture, but how is the business?
It's early days, and the Holy Spirit is still morphing it into what it will be. But so my most recent position outside of my business was as missionary for the community engagement with the diocesan office. And in that role, for those of you that don't know, what I was doing is really helping and building relationships with our faith communities, developing mission partners, really utilizing an asset-based community organizing lens to pull out how do you deepen partnerships to develop transformation. And it was joyous work. I loved it. And especially coming from ECMN, it was such a gift to do that work. And so as I was discerning what's next, and so much has changed since the pandemic, we see diversity and equity really being asked to be engaged of businesses in ways that it never was before. And people don't always know how to start that work. And that all got me really thinking about, where is the Holy Spirit calling me? Where do I get excited to get up every day? And it's in those relationships. And so my new business, Capacity Collective, is really about helping people and businesses do that work, to engage, both on an individual level of how do I show up at my job and hear where the Spirit is calling, here where I can use my passions and gifts. I utilize the Enneagram and all of those really good tools. And then also helping businesses. Mainly right now, it's churches and nonprofits, but it's any business that is interested in deepening partnerships. How do we see what our mission is? And really live to stretch into partnerships to achieve that mission. Increase our impact, and not just do it in a transactional way, but do it in a way that shifts community, that makes us truly siblings in this world that we're living in, and pulls apart those complexities of isms that we always have, and allows us to be transformed as much as we're here to transform. Yeah.
Amen. I mean, what a vision. Yeah.
And so,
well,
I was just gonna say, and so what that looks like on an individual level is it's executive coaching, and what that looks like on a business level is business consulting, and sharing skills and doing that project management, project direction piece to help people, help businesses get into that, and lean in a way that allows them to start where they can. Start where your gifts are, not 5 paces down, which I think a lot of places try to start when they're doing things like this. And then they wonder, why isn't it working? Yeah.
Totally. Yep, absolutely. Tracking completely. And in fact, when you had sort of first shared the vision of what you were talking about doing, that's when our interest was piqued in reaching out to you and doing some partnership work with you and your organization, because the cathedral is situated in a particular place. And we, it's our spirituality as people sort of the Benedictine way, who believe that God has situated us in this place with this people at this time for a specific reason. And then our vocation emerges out of getting clear about the place and all of that. And part of the tricky part of being a cathedral is that there are a lot of interests and a lot of needs that cross our radar screen. And it's really hard to exercise the kind of discipline required to get clear, not on what all the things are that we could do, or even that we should do, but what is the thing right in front of us that we must do, and that we're uniquely positioned and gifted and passionate about actually doing. And so we've invited you in to do some work with us, to help consult with us about how to in a way kind of focus and deepen what has been a longstanding relationship between the cathedral and the colleges who are here on the park with us. And we're aware that there are some other neighborhood partners who might be interested in sidling along with us in that work. But I wonder if you could say just a little bit about at least your early sense of the vision for what your work with the cathedral specifically might look like in terms of our connection with the schools around us.
Yeah, I'd love to. And when this all started to bubble up, I started to lean in really excited because, of course, as I mentioned a minute ago, one of my first entry points was Monday Night Supper, which we have transitioned away from because of the continuum of care and other things that help. But that program was designed for homeless young adults. It started in the 80s, and it was a meal program for homeless young adults. And what's interesting is I worked in homelessness for 15 years, in family homelessness and young adult homelessness, and what the government shows up to in Minnesota is it does a lot, and so shelters and feeding and some of those things are really part of that social service net that our city and county come up into. And when we look at the partnerships around where St. Mark's is, you've got Dunwoody, you've got Minneapolis College, you've got already a partnership with Emerson, and looking at what you're already doing. The Lionheart Scholarship with Minneapolis College of really helping first generation folks and folks who struggle to make it through college. That's powerful. And if you don't know about the Lionheart Scholarship, learn about it. It's a great program. But what else can we do? How else can we lean in? And I think developing partnerships, particularly with young adults, there's something about that DNA in St. Mark's. They like to show up. And what was so amazing about Monday Night Supper at the time it started is that it was a new thing. Youth Link didn't exist at this point. Governments didn't provide subsidies and support for people that have aged out of foster care or these young adults who were homeless. And now I feel like we're at a new space. It's 2022, and St. Mark's is starting to ask some really cool questions of, well, what could we do now? What partnership could we have now? And with that DNA in us of what we care about, it's like Minneapolis College is right there. We're different than we were in 1980. They're different. So let's take some time to figure out how we feel called. What is the spirit stirring up in us, and what they'd be open to at Minneapolis College, and starting with some of the student services stuff, particularly targeting kids who are homeless, particularly targeting kids who are first generation college students, and where are the ways that us coming alongside and being in relationship with them helps those kids be okay, helps those young adults achieve graduation, achieve business success, entrepreneurship. I get ideas, and this, we're still in early days of what this could look like, but we've got great business people in the congregation who started businesses, who do great things. What if we had a mentorship program? Who knows? It's this idea of how can we be in relationship with the students and the programs that are around us so that we can take our gifts of loving them, of showing up, of cheering them on, and really help them feel loved, of doing that work that maybe their family has never done, so they don't know how to do some of that stuff. And this first chunk of time will really be about discernment and learning about each other, learning about us, and how we feel called to do a partnership. Because there's lots of things you can do, and you don't want to take on too much, because then you can't succeed, and then you fall away, and then you've let them down. And that's something that's very dear to my heart, of like, no, if we're going to do this, we're going to do this for the long haul, and we're going to show up, and we're going to be transformed as much as we transform them. And it's about real partnerships. It's about maybe everyone in the congregation someday knows exactly when Minneapolis College graduation is, because we have a whole section where we're cheering people on. I mean, that's powerful. And so those are the things that we're going to look to discern in this next time.
Yeah, that's really well said. And one of the things you mentioned, the Lionheart Scholarship, we've been doing the Lionheart Scholarship now. It's the Dean's Annual Christmas Appeal. It's the thing, that the mechanism that funds on a regular basis the Lionheart Scholarship. And we have now contributed over the course of the last 7 years. We didn't do it our first year together, but over the last 7 years, we've contributed well over $100,000 to student scholarship. And I want to say that our current numbers are just shy of 75 students that we have supported with educational financial support. And that is fantastic. And we want to continue to grow the base of the congregation who are pledging towards that every year. And one of the things that we've discovered by kind of getting a foot in the door and starting to build a relationship through the college foundation, one of the things we discover is that it's really vitally important to invest to get the education started. And what we're asking you to come and help us do, Rachel, as a whole congregation, and really you as our designated listener, to help to do the discovery and the discernment, and really sort of scale and scope of our right response,
exactly,
as you described as the first quarter's work. Is that there's, once we've gotten the students started, our goal is to help make sure that they've completed And there's so many little obstacles, even in the best of circumstances, to getting through an entire educational program. And like you said, there's so many things we could do, and your work among us is really to help identify the need and identify the gift, and then figure out where there's alignment.
Yes.
Right? Because as you mentioned, that question of us changing and them changing, Fred Bickner, who, as you know, died this past week, he defined vocation as that intersection of our deep gladness and the world's deep need. And both of those things are always changing, right? So the intersection always changing. So you're really going to come and work as a consultant with us to help us navigate those shifting lines, to help us find that sweet spot at the intersection of our deep gladness and the community's deep need. And like you said, to not only really pinpoint and help focus our best contribution, but to help set us up and develop leadership around the response that's
so it's sustainable.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Well, that sounds timely. It sounds like exactly what we need. Yeah, and I've been working with the foundation for long enough to know they're really clear. That's what they need from partner organizations on the park. So I'm excited to get to contribute that to the success of Minneapolis College and of Dunwoody as well. And I've got every confidence in your skill set that you'll help us be successful in that. I do wonder, and as we sort of head towards closing this, I wonder, are there any early things we could be doing to be praying for you and supporting you as you're doing this early phase of discernment on the congregation's behalf? What do you need from us?
Absolutely. I would first ask that everyone in the congregation starts to add Minneapolis College and Dunwoody to their prayers, and our partnership of asking the Holy Spirit, where do I show up in this? Those are really big pieces, because we're going to need people who do lots of different things. And not everyone needs to be the same cookie cutter kind of volunteer. And so it's really important there to just start with prayer and discernment. I think the second piece is be open. People so often, and we do this in our churches, I get it, I do it too. We hear something new and we start to project, okay, so it's going to go like this, it's going to go like this, it's going to go like this, it's going to have a linear line. And as somebody who's done lots of church work, it's rarely an easy linear line. And community engagement work, especially post-pandemic, in higher ed, it's lots of moving pieces constantly. And what we want to do is be intentional in all of that. So I ask that everybody is open. And if you have questions, reach out. Let's have dialogue, and we will create spaces for that. But be open to where this could call us.
Love it. And certainly, Rachel, you can count on our congregation's prayers of thanks and praise for you, being the sort of designated listener for us. And so then I want to remind folks, there's probably three key things to be paying attention to that are forthcoming while this is unfolding before us. First, pay close attention and be listening in for updates and targeted invitations from Rachel and from the team that starts to gather around this work. So pay attention to that. Be prepared for the annual Fall Lionheart Scholars Gala that will happen at some point this fall. Tends to happen in November, so be looking for that if you want to show up, learn more about the scholarship, learn more about MCTC and Dunwoody, learn more about this year's batch of scholars who have just already been rewarded or have been awarded those scholarships for this academic year. That's a chance to engage some of them. And last but not least, within the late fourth quarter, as with every year, the Dean's Christmas Appeal this year will again be targeted and designated funds for scholarships for students at MCTC in Dunwoody. So pay attention to invitations to donate to that. It is a great thing we've done, and this will be our 8th Christmas doing that together, for which I think we can rejoice and be proud of that work. So now we're just going to add some flesh to those bones and see where that takes us.
Yeah.
And couldn't have a better partner in that than Rachel Babbitt. So Rachel, thank you so much for saying yes. Thank you so much for being amazing at the work that you do and for being courageous and visionary in all of this. And we're just really excited to see where the Spirit leads all of us, and grateful for your leadership in that.
Thanks. I'm super excited too. So it'll be fun.
Good, good. Well, take good care of yourself, and stay tuned, everybody, for the next word out of our partnership here. And take good care of yourself, and we'll be in touch soon.
Bye.
Bye.